Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to this week's episode of Couch Trip. That's Eddie Reece. I'm Billy Courtright, and this is going to be 45 minutes of therapy for everyday life. Eddie and I were just talking off air, as we often do, and we talked about how to kill the mood at a cocktail party. And as we're talking about cocktail parties and holiday gatherings and what divides us, Eddie said to
Yeah.
me, how you can crush the mood at a cocktail party? Well, it's three topics that are legit showstoppers, and they are money and finance, sex and death. So, I found that incredibly compelling, and Eddie's going to share with us why those three topics tend to crush the vibe, stop the program, and cause some awkward silences on tap or on cue. But the reality is there's some commonality through there that we'll talk about. Interestingly enough, when I think of mortality, I'm a few years younger than Eddie, and I'm graduating into a period of my life where I consider myself legacy minded. Legacy was not a term that I was readily faced with in my 20s or 30s. But as I got into my 40s and now in my 50s, I definitely hear that word a lot with my peer group. And it's this idea that we're becoming more cognizant of our impact, our story, what people view us as, the value or lack of value that we may have had. What did we do well? How did we contribute? What are we known for? And I find it kind of compelling. And as a father of two boys and a husband, I consider my behavior as I raise boys, and I consider what people would say about me if I wasn't around. And legacy for me is a lot about what I'm going to do with the time I have left. And I'm going to be completely transparent. I don't really think about mortality or death in the conversation of legacy, which probably says something about me, my maybe lack of willingness or ability to even recognize it. But I am aware of the work I have left to do and the good I might be able to impart on my community and my family. So, Eddie, as it pertains to the awkwardness, the uncomfortable silence, the almost unanimous desire to not discuss the three topics that I mentioned at the top of the episode, specifically, let's dive into mortality, death, legacy, and is the way I feel about this uncommon, or is this? I know we don't use the word normal around
No,
here.
no, not at all. Well, normal is just, you're kind of messed up. I mean, normal in a sick society is sick, everybody's sick, but normal in this culture when it comes to mental emotional health, normal is not real good. But a client sometimes go, it should be normal. I go, you are. That's why on my couch I want to make you abnormal. And you threw in the word legacy, and for some reason I heard it differently. Legacy, I tend to think of as something that will last pretty much forever. But your legacy is not going to last forever. At some point, certainly probably 100 years from now, nobody's gonna have any knowledge that either one of us ever even existed. So, I if you're concerned about your legacy, I, I wouldn't be. It's not gonna last. So, be more concerned about what you're doing today, how you're behaving today, how you're um treating people today, not how somebody's going to view that down the road because they're not.
You're right. You're right. But I tell you what, it is a driver of behavior. Certainly, in my opinion, it's a
Yeah.
driver of hopefully positive behavior. Um, Again,
Well,
as we
is
can,
it? I don't know. I kind of, now that I'm sort of thinking about it in the way I just mentioned it, it was like, boy, I want to do all of this to really leave a good legacy. Am I? why would you care what anybody is thinking about you or saying about you and after you're dead? I mean, I think your energy is better spent in doing things in a way that people will be saying or thinking or talking about you today and tomorrow. You know, that
I don't think they're mutually exclusive, but yeah, you're right.
well, I do because again, they're not going to be talking about you.
Well, you say that as a man without
No,
kids. I mean, I hope my
I
kids
don't
are
care how
talking to
many
my
kids you
grandkids
have.
about me.
Yeah, but
Oh, you
yeah,
should have
but
met Grandpa. Oh, what a guy.
okay, you're somebody's grandson.
Yep.
Do you know anything about your great grandfather's father?
Nope.
No. Do you know that much about your great grandfather?
Nope.
No. So, I mean, one generation and boom,
Okay,
it's
so
over.
even if it's figurative or ethereal or aspirational, all of which could be true. In the green room there, you talked about something that was quite compelling, which is, what drives behavior is fairly consistent. How we frame it may change. I choose to frame it as,
Yeah.
oh, what are my kids going to say about me when I'm gone, which makes me feel good. Whether or not that's bullshit or not, that's
Yeah.
we could go down that road we have before. But the reality is when people choose to talk about something or not choose to talk about something or to do something or not choose to do something, what's the underlying motive?
Well, I mean, it's depends on how much shame people have. The more shame you have, the more motivated you are by your shame. Um,
I think that's right.
I think of somebody worried about how they're going to be talked about after their death is being motivated more by shame. Because I mean, why would you care?
I don't
Um,
know, but I will tell you, as someone who's asked this question or been asked this question a lot in my field, the idea of what are you known for and what do you want to be known for, those are real questions. And it's
oh yeah, I mean, for today and the rest of my life, after that, I don't care. I mean, if everybody looked back at me, after I was gone and said, "Yeah, what do I care? I mean, dead, I don't care. I mean, I, I should care while I'm alive, while I'm interacting with them, while I'm doing things that may affect them or do affect them. I mean, that's when I want to be concerned, but I don't even think of it as, I'm not concerned about what they're going to think. I'm trying to come up with a scenario. If somebody's talking to me and they're saying that they're doing something or going to do something that I think is gonna not be a really good idea, um, I'm going to tell them I don't think that's a really good idea. I'm not going to have the thought of, well, I'm going to say that and then have a concern about what they're going to think of me or say about me or talk to somebody else about me. I'm going to tell them what I think. And, it's my opinion. I could be wrong, but if I'm saying that, and I do this with my clients, they think they're saying or doing something nice, and I go, "You're not. You're really being mean." I'm not sitting there thinking, "Oh, well, that might make them upset with me." They get upset with me, that's great. That's another place to go in therapy. That'll be really helpful. Um, so I don't. I think the less shame you have, the less you are concerned about it. They're more concerned about being kind, treating people well, taking, good care of folks around you, and to say, I don't think that's a very good idea. In my mind, that's taking good care of somebody. Making
No,
a
no,
point at all?
no. I think you're making sense. And I don't disagree with you. And again, I think that my opinions or view of mortality at the stage of life that I'm at are going to be different than the views of mortality to someone who's doesn't look at the world the way I do. And in my where I am in my life, I in choosing to recognize mortality, I'm not really recognizing the end date so much as I'm
Mm.
recognizing the time left as if as it's defined. So there's a definite amount
Well,
of time.
okay. And yeah, there's a definite amount of time, and you say, well, I'm thinking about the time left. What's your thought?
Well, the thought is it's not unlimited, and the decisions that I make now have, in my opinion, more significance as I recognize that definiteness of time. My opinion. This is me.
Okay.
And I
But
do think there's shame there. I think there's shame
but how
around.
much time do you think that might be?
Well, it could be an hour. It could be a decade. It could be
Right.
3 decades.
Right. And so the fact that it could be any moment now, says, um, I, when I heard this saying, I heard that it had come from Nick Saban, be where your feet are,
Yeah.
you know, but don't, don't get too far ahead of yourself, son. It's like, there's some country song that's something about what am I going to do with the next 40 years? Well, you don't know that you have 40 years. So what are you going to do now in this moment? How are you going to spend your time now? How are you going to spend your next time? It's great to make plans. It's great to think of, I want to raise my kids well. I want to have them go off into the world as prepared as possible. Um, and that can very much come from shame, which would really mean so that when people come across my kids, they will think highly of me. Okay. If you don't have any shame, which isn't possible, but you can certainly get rid of most of your shame around raising your kids. It's I want to do that. I want to do what I can for them. Um, oh, because I hope they can go out and do some good in the world. I hope they can find ways to enjoy themselves. I hope they are very accepting of the fact that they're going to get the crap kicked out of them a lot. And very disappointed and turned down a lot. That things that are really good and really bad and a whole lot in between are going to happen that are completely and totally unexpected. I want to prepare them for that, um, so that maybe their lives can be 2 or 3 degrees easier than mine was. That's about the best I can hope for. But I'm not doing that to make myself feel any better. I'm not doing that at all for me. Um, I'm not doing it. Have somebody go, oh, you did a good job raising your kids. It's like, well, thanks, but the better compliment would be to tell me what they thought of my kids, not me.
Well, so interestingly, like you mentioned, uh, the next 40 years, which I believe is Tim McGraw, and
Yeah, yeah.
he also wrote a song called "Live Like You're Dying," and
Oh yeah, boy, that was a big song going through cancer treatment with my first wife.
yeah, well, I
Yeah.
mean, but again, there's if we're just going to be kind of superficial about it and just look at it for what it is, there's like, I mean, health clubs and diets and personal trainers and travel and tourism. I mean, there's a lot of business and a lot of emphasis in today's world around your best life, your best self. Don't put off too long. You never know, to your point earlier, you never know if you've got an hour or a decade. And this idea, live like you're dying. Like, how would you, like, what would you do today if you had 30 days left? And why aren't you doing those? But again, like, in that to me is mortality. And maybe that's naive on my part.
I think most of those things you mentioned are marketed primarily to help people believe they will live longer.
Agreed. Or better.
Or better, or live healthier. But again, is more motivated by shame. Put some links in here to where we're talking about shame in more depth in our podcast. But, shame basically says that I'm no good and I can't let anybody know that. So I've got to go out and do all these things so that people will look at me and go, well, he's a good person. I'm not doing those things because I'm nice or want to be helpful or really even care. I'm doing them to do everything I can to keep the world and ultimately myself from seeing my shame. So that I want these people to tell me I'm a good person so I can hear that enough so I'll actually believe it. The problem is I will never believe it. It's never good enough. And that's a real common feeling that people have. It's never enough. I'm never going to be good enough. I'm just not good enough. And I'll ask them, good enough for what? Like they don't really know. The answer is good enough to where I won't feel bad about myself. Well, there are times you should feel bad about yourself, but what you're really trying to do is feel good enough or be good enough to get rid of my shame or at least hide it well enough so that I don't even see it. And what you got to do is you got to bring your shame out in the open and look at it and get to know it really well and share it with somebody who can listen to it and not try to change it, make you better. And so we don't talk about those three subjects, I think, primarily because of shame. Culturally, it's just not accepted. Um, I I was one of the first therapists to promote and talk about talking to clients about their financial lives. And even today, now that was 30 years ago, even today, most therapists don't talk to their clients about their financial lives. And that's a big part of their lives. Why not? Why not? How much money you're making? How much debt do you have? How are things going financially? I mean, imagine that cocktail party thing, you just met somebody, you're chatting, getting to know them, and you go, well, how much do you make for you, a year? How much you got in retirement? What kind of credit card debt are you carrying? But why not have those topics, out in the open and talking to people about them because an awful lot of people are struggling with them. And I think it would really be helpful if we did talk to people about it. Oprah had a little thing at one point about what she called the debt diet, and she was advocating forming groups in your neighborhood, and in those groups saying, here's my financial situation. And, the people that did that, they talked about virtually everybody they talked to was struggling, like credit card debt, having a hard time paying bills, things like that. We're not taught those things. Yeah. We're not taught about sex. I mean, sex education. Okay, here's they show you the anatomy and physiology of it. But what about learning what your preferences are and are not? What about learning um, what people actually do, not what porn stars do? What do real people do? There's videos on my feed because I'm a golfer of people on a golf course having a fight. I mean, they're throwing blows. And there's always comments on there about, real fighting never looks like what you see in the movies and TV. Same thing with sex. I mean, go videotape yourself having sex and watch it. See what you think. You're gonna be like, really? That's what going on? You know. Um, it so why don't we talk about that? Why don't we at a cocktail party, and have a conversation about, I feel like I want to do this with my wife, and I don't even know how to bring it up, and somebody goes, oh yeah, yeah, that's typical, I kind of went through a similar thing with my wife, because I like to do this, and that'd be a normal conversation. Normal conversation is, I've been thinking, I had a friend of mine die or a relative die recently, and I've been thinking, wow, I really am going to die. I'm kind of thinking about that, and it's hard to think about. Well, yeah, mortality is a typical thing to talk about. What it's like getting older. To have those conversations, and it's like if you're of a certain age, you got some possessions, you got a few dollars, you need to be doing a will, you need to be doing those sorts of things, setting up, your estate planning. Your partner needs to know what to do. With all the bank accounts and where all the money is. And that should just be automatic. Um,
Do you think
how
that
many how many people do that?
none, zero, and but there's I'm asking myself, like, why would I never bring up those topics at a cocktail party? And to me, it's not that I wouldn't like to have the conversation. I think the conversation would be compelling. I think the conversation would be helpful.
Mhm.
Um, but there's a part of me that says not everybody at that cocktail party, in my view, is worthy of that conversation with me.
Well,
And
true, but that's not my point. My point is that as a culture, we don't go there.
well, but the point I was going to make is there a level of intimacy, or is there privacy, or is it all shame?
It's all shame. I mean, from what I know about India, I mean, they're marching their people through the streets when they die. There's a big ceremony, and they set up the funeral pyre, and then people burn, and it's in public. Somebody dies here, and everybody's sequestered off in some room somewhere.
Yeah.
Um, there just needs to be a lot more discussion about it. And, as being much older now, uh, I would love to have had a lot of discussions with people about all the different things that go along with aging. If you Google the aging, you're probably gonna get a whole bunch of mess about plastic surgery and exercise and being healthier and basically any and everything you can do to hold it off. And I think of people like Walter Matthau, that face, man. I mean, he would not have been Walter Matthau with some plastic surgery and getting rid of that face. I mean, that face was priceless. Um, it, I think it's important to see the life someone to live, in their face, and for you to be able to see that, you know. And again, if you work at healing your shame, you don't see those wrinkles and those lines and the bald head and feel less than, you know. It's that all comes from shame. And again, if we're having conversations, if we're talking about it, if we're sharing stories, which is really what talking about it means. If you're sharing stories, if I sat with my parents or grandparents or great grandparents and they shared stories with me about as I aged, here's the things that happened, here's the things I had to adapt to. Um, I had some amazing conversations like that with a college professor, Ken Matheny, who was taught me in graduate school, and Ken was every student's favorite professor, and Ken and I became golf buddies, and played golf together for years, and we talked a lot about that. We talked a lot about aging, and what I learned from Ken was, um, you know, from Darwin, it's adapt or die. He said, Eddie, he said, aging is simply adapting, 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 and then you adapt again. Um, the changes happen, and people want to fight it, uh, but adapt to it, you know. Um, so that's really the point of why are there more conversations? Why are people talking about it? We're missing these very needed opportunities to learn from each other, to learn from um, people who have been there, dealt with it, um, to have an idea of what's coming. And with mortality, especially, the more fully you really know that it could be any moment now, keeps you awake. It keeps you engaged. On the wall up here in my office, I have a print from an artist named Brian Andreas who calls his artwork story people. And he has these drawings of these people, and then there's a story. And the story on this one, I saw it and blown away like I was by a lot of his work. And I contacted him and I asked him, I said, could I use this as my mission statement? He said, sure. And what it says is that most people don't know that there are angels in the world whose only job is to make sure you don't get too comfortable, fall asleep, and miss your life. So, and when you talk about these things, when you share your feelings about them, when you explore those feelings, when you get to the shame that's there was put on you, you weren't born with that, then you stay awake. You're more engaged. The movie Little Big Man, it's a big theme in that movie. I loved that movie. I was probably late teens, early 20s or something when I saw it. And my first midlife crisis was as a 5, 6 year old or something, and realizing that everybody does die, including me, and that kept me up for years.
Yeah.
Freaked me out. I didn't know how to handle it. Um, and that movie was wonderful, uh, about that. His main character, Dustin Hoffman's main character, is one of the folks that raised him. He called grandfather, um, and grandfather continually talked about walking with death on your shoulder every day, and you should, and you know, another story, but people talk to me about, I want to live as long as I can, and I want to be as healthy as I can, and maintain my faculties as long as I can. And say, okay, let's take a look at what that looks like. Let's say you live to be 110, okay, and your head's clear as a bell. You probably aren't gonna go out and run, but let's say you can hobble your way around, all right? What's your life going to be in the last, well, 30, 40 years of your life, which is a pretty big chunk of that 110? You're going to go to a lot of hospitals and visit a lot of people. You're going to watch countless people you know suffer, sometimes for long periods of time. And you're going to see all these people you know and love die before you because they didn't get your wish. That's gonna be your life. Is that really what you want? You know? And I've never had anybody go, yeah, but that's what it would be. I mean, even at my age now, gosh, how many people I can name right off the top of my head real quick. People that my wife, I know, 5 of them, 6 of them that are really, really, really struggling. And at least one of them is pretty close. And that's your life. And to watch your heroes die, and so if you can talk about that and share your concerns, your fears, ask your questions, get some good answers and advice, and sometimes those answers maybe there aren't any answers, and make it, as grandfather said, walking with death on your shoulder every day. Then you can handle that, You can go and visit these people and sit with them. And instead of being bent out of shape about, well, what do I say? You can actually sit with them and do what I think is the epitome of kindness, um, and hold their hand, and without ever saying a word, you can, I think, communicate that I know this is happening. And there's not a damn thing I can do about it. And I am so glad to sit with you at this time. I remember my wife's brother, when he died, he was on a hospital bed in the living room in the house he grew up in, and there was this big gathering and people, and I looked and I saw nobody was sitting with him, and I'm like, holy shit, and I'm like, so I just went and sat down and held his hand, right. I must have sat there for close to an hour, just talking to him. And it's a lovely thing to do.
Yeah, the humanity. It's just,
I mean, it is, and without any of the therapy that I've had, I have no idea what I would have done in that situation. I probably would have gone to somebody else and said nobody's sitting with them.
right. And
Um,
it takes courage too. I mean, it's not just therapy. It's the therapy to develop the courage and the self-awareness and the kindness and the compassion. But
no, there's really no courage involved at
no, but
all,
there is.
really.
I can.
No,
Oh,
no,
there's
no.
sure there is.
No, courage is doing something that you're afraid of and doing it anyway.
There are many of us that are afraid of death.
There's nothing about sitting with him that was the least bit scary to me. So there's no courage involved at all. It was as easy a thing as there was. There was the only thought was, oh wow, nobody said wanted to went over and sat down. I mean, and I didn't even think, oh, I just I did it. You know, I mean, it was easy. I was glad to. Oh, I was glad to have the time. You know, um, so
That's
yeah.
unique. It's
Yeah,
unique.
but
It's courageous,
and
whether you
well,
want to admit it or not. I think it is.
no. It's not the least bit. It would be courageous for somebody who was scared to do
Okay,
that. And if you're scared, that's my whole point here is go talk to people about
right.
it. Go explore any and every aspect of the subject as it pertains to you, your own mortality, the mortality of the people you love, and what that does to you, and get all that stuff out with somebody who can really hear it and guide you, and in a way that helps you become who you want to be about that. Okay, not to help you become the way you're supposed to be about that. Right? That's the mistake that shame does to us.
And Eddie,
So,
I think that's the message of this entire episode is that, you kind of touched on it, whether you knew it or not, at the end there. And the idea that, to your point, we're not likely going to start bringing up money, sex, and death at cocktail parties. And it
no,
doesn't change the fact that
no.
we would all benefit to that having that conversation. And the reality is, and what I've learned through this episode, and this is just my revelation, it could be totally wrong, but what I've come to realize right here is if ever we were filming a commercial for therapy, this episode was it, because we started talking about something that's awkward and uncomfortable, dripped in shame and fear. I think you may not, but I think there's fear there.
Yeah, for most everybody, sure
Okay,
there's
so and
fear
I'm most
because
everybody.
it's people go, well, it's unknown, and I go, no, it's not unknown. If it were unknown, you could not be afraid of it. Okay, what it is you have a perceived bad future about it. That's what you want to explore.
Yeah,
Why is that the future of infinite futures? Why is that the one you picked? And then you use that to scare yourself.
right. And
Right.
I can't think of anybody more appropriate to go down that rabbit hole with than a therapist.
Yeah, a really good one. It's dealt with it. But they're few and far between too, I'm
Sure,
afraid.
but again,
I
it's
hate to
it's not just
say.
something you're going to talk about and figure out with your brother-in-law. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I mean, my brother-in-law was, and he had so many drugs in him, he wasn't even there. You know, I'm just sitting and watching him breathe, but I mean, I'm still talking to him. It's still him. And how wouldn't I?
Well,
And I just sat in silence most of the time, because there's not that much to say at that point, So, I'm saying a lot by going, I'm here, man.
yeah.
I'm here.
Well, one thing I've learned about you, Eddie, and it's an amazing thing to witness, and it warms my heart every time I'm slapped in the face with the reality that is, there are few more other focused individuals I've ever met than you.
Oh,
So
I appreciate that.
well, and that's true. I mean, you're even in the conversations that we have privately, you're as others focused as anyone I've ever met,
Mm.
and the career that you've chosen, your marriage, for what I understand, your friend circle, how you treat people, whether it's a server or a Delta attendant or anyone. you have an interesting way of recognizing individuals for who they are and acknowledging individuals. And you have an awareness about yourself that is rare. So, when I think of like, why would I want to go to therapy? I would like to go to therapy because if I come out of therapy, however long it takes, with a selfless, heart to serve, kind, compassionate, and curious demeanor that puts me in a fearless state as I grab the hand of a dying man and sit for an hour, that's an amazing legacy to this guy.
Yeah. I mean, well, there was nothing else in my mind about what to do, you know. And I mean, I do appreciate all the kind words and I can be a jerk too. I apologize to the gal behind the desk at the doctor's office yesterday. Um, I'd filled out all the forms that were on the portal, and so went in and she hands me a clipboard and I'm like, I already filled all that out. And she goes, these I didn't see on the portal. The last thing I want to do is sit there and fill out forms. And so I was kind of like, I mean, I didn't like say anything mean or anything, but I was, what's the word, a little snippy. Whatever, whatever it was. And went and sat down, filled out, damn, March. So anyway, when I left to check out, I had a piece of paper to give her, and I said I want to apologize for being a little accidentally sober this morning. I said that was not nice. You don't deserve that, and you don't have anything to do with that. I'm sorry. He's like, oh, no problem. I was probably one of the nicest mean people to her. I mean, but I mean, I had to do that. There was just no way I was going to walk out of there and not do that. And as I hear myself say that, back to the first part of our conversation, it's not because of worrying about what she's going to think of me. I don't give a shit what she thinks about me. It's what I think about myself and how I feel about myself, about how I treat myself and other people. I don't want to carry that with me, that I know I was mean and I didn't take that back. So, yeah, so I'm not an angel.
I think you are.
To quote Greg Allman, I'm no angel.
Wow.
I might steal your diamonds, but I'll bring you back some gold.
There you go. There you go. It's yeah, it's kind of the destination, not the journey. I mean, however you made your way back to a very kind-hearted, others-focused way to end that interaction, you still got there. And again, we talked about at the top of the episode, awkward conversations. It led to mortality, one of the most uncomfortable conversations. We then got into shame. And then we talked about your revelation, which is, how much more beneficial would it be if we were able to have these conversations in a more open setting? And that's wishful thinking, and we can wish in one hand, shit in the other, but it ain't gonna matter. The reality is you can contact a therapist and have these conversations and discuss your stresses about money and discuss your stresses about debt and discuss your stresses about sex and your marriage and your relationships and the holidays and your mortality. And I can't think of a better person to have these conversations with than a therapist. And then the hope being, after a period of time, you could come out of there with an awareness and a recognition and an acknowledgement that wherever you stand, your point of Nick Saban, be where your feet are, is okay.
Well, I bristle that is okay. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. This is where I am in the moment. whatever that might be, but that might not be okay with me. I in the moment I was being, snippy to this woman, and I'm not okay with that. It's okay to not be okay. A good bit of the time, you should not be okay with how you're behaving or the way you're being. People use that term, and that's why I bristle at it, to push things away. Oh, and that's okay. Well, no, it's not. Pay attention to it. Listen to it. It's not okay. And usually, if you even say that, it's because it's not okay. Otherwise, why do you even need to say it? But yeah, I, I do these podcasts, and we talked about this before or I guess as we got started on this project. It's been what, a year and a half, maybe now. I just want the things that we're talking about out there. There's not enough of it. There's plenty of self-help books. There's plenty of how-to things, but in my opinion, most of it's just crap. It's just trying to make you feel better, not have you get deep and explore and really plow into who it is you are, and who it is you want to be and how to become that. That's not an easy sell. Therapy's not an easy sell. It breaks my heart that therapists even exist. Or we should need therapists. And there should be plenty of people that know this, to talk to and who care about you and be glad to talk to you about it, for free, because they like you or care about you or they just like sharing information.
People can't give that which they don't have.
That's exactly it, which is why I rail about therapists need to go to therapy.
Right.
Yeah, because you got to go get it, and that spend a lot of money and time to learn these things, and it's tricky. It's tricky to do this. It is a hard sell. It's a hard sell to yourself to stay with it sometimes. Sometimes I just want to go, but there's God, where did I first hear that from? I've heard it a number of times before or since, but don't look for an easy life. Look for a hard life that you know how to navigate. Life is hard. That's the first tenet of Buddhism. Life's difficult. So don't look for easy. Look for, how do I adapt? How do I learn? How do I become? Those are difficult roads, but they're way easier than the roads of ignorance and not caring and, being mean, nasty. Those roads are way harder. And I say that to my clients all the time. I give them an idea of where we're going. They go, well, that sounds really hard. And I go, not nearly as hard as what you're doing. That's hard, but that's never going to get better. So this will get better. So
Well said,
easier. So
Well-
yeah. So go talk about dying and money and sex and, find out about that stuff.
Yeah. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this has been another episode, and we're almost at the hour of Couch Trip Therapy for Everyday Life. That's Eddie Reece. I'm Billy Courtright, and this was, again, one of the more compelling conversations. It's interesting the way I perceive things in my limited view, and what you're able to share, having gone through this personally and professionally for the length of time that you had. And it's interesting because, as our listeners and viewers know, I mean, my role here is just to kind of give a layperson's perspective, a non-professional perspective. I'm not in therapy, folks. So the idea that I have conversations with Eddie it's representing those of you out there that are thinking, would this be helpful? And the questions that I ask are questions that I honestly have, and they're through the lens of this, naive perspective as it is, and it's okay for me to be naive because
No, it's not. It's not okay.
yes, it is. It is.
I just established a new goal for these podcasts is that at some point you're going to come in and say, I'm in therapy now.
Yeah, you're right. I will. I just don't know if it's going to be during or after this podcast series. Well, anyway, it's always a
Sooner or
pleasure.
better.
That's right. You're right. Yeah, no, everyone here, all our fans know, hey, Billy, you got to get in. Let me know how it goes and who you're seeing.
Yeah, really. This is we'll poll your friends and family.
Oh, they'll be the first ones to tell you he needs to be in there. He needs to be in there. He's dealing with more unresolved childhood
It's
trauma,
a
daddy
unanimous
issues, and shame.
decision. Boom.
Well, this is fun. Hopefully, this was helpful. I won't use okay anymore because that clearly gets under Eddie's skin, as you've all seen. So, as we record this episode, it is mid-December. So, happy holidays to you and yours. This will be released likely in January, and we'll have a whole bunch of things to talk about subsequent to this episode. So, ladies and gentlemen, this has again been the Couch Trip Therapy for Everyday Life. That's Eddie. I'm Billy. Have a great day.
Bye, folks. Thanks, Billy.
My pleasure.